So I would like to dig into the Bengals Lions Super Bowl that will happen at the event that we don't see Baltimore playing in the game this year, even though it still intrigues me that Tom Brady told Lamar Jackson that you next. But looking at scenario number two, the city of Cleveland's last title came in 1964, and Jared Goff of the Lions is a quarterback who played in a Super Bowl with the LA Rams. It's LA Rams. That is Gematria, the state of Ohio's last NFL championship in 1964. The stadium would be at the Super Bowl would be at the stadium of the New Orleans Saints, and New Orleans Saints is Gematria 64, and of course Dan Campbell is coach of the Lions. And when you think of an all-cat Super Bowl, an all-cat Super Bowl may end up making actually a lot of sense. And if the Bengals do win the Super Bowl, then it would occur how many years later for Ohio's next championship? Well, December of 2024, we'd be at 60 years. And it's Bengals, that's Gematria 60. And so that remains very interesting. And if we go off of the year, 61 years after 1964, then Detroit Lions is Gematria 61. So it'd be interesting. It'd be a title drought for the state of Ohio and the city of Detroit too. So that's very interesting. Now, if Burrow wins the Super Bowl this year, it would be Mike Brown's 34th season as owner of the team. It's Jared that's 34, and it's the LA Rams that is Gematria of 34. In the 2024 season, it is Lions in reverse playing the Super Bowl 6 months and 6 days after Tom Brady's birthday, and Bengals is Gematria of 2024. Another championship for the state of Ohio. The last Super Bowl was played at New Orleans in Super Bowl 47. Ohio is Gematria of 2025, 61 years after 1964, and the Bengals are currently at 16 playoff losses as a franchise. And this would occur. Well, let's kind of look at it from the angle of how much time after. The thing about the last championship in the state of Ohio for GOAT King LeBron James won the championship back in 2016. Is this going to happen close to 9 years after Father's Day? It's Dad. That's Gematria of 9. You know, when we look at February of this year. So, kind of around 8 years in the 8th month after the Warriors remained at 88 wins. But just kind of showing you what stacks up with this Lions-Bengals possibility. 9 years and 8 months after a championship, if they do win in 2026, instead, it's champions. That's now the interesting thing about 2026. Last championship for the state of Ohio occurred at the Bay Area. So do we see that happening at the Bay Area? This is what has me right now still leaning with Ravens in Super Bowl 59 and Bengals in Super Bowl 60 instead of Bengals in 59 and Ravens in Super Bowl 60. 39 winning seasons, the Bengals is Gematria 39, but then if it's season number 40, the Ravens is Gematria 40. Now, if they lose for the 15th time in the playoffs, Joe Burrow would win the Super Bowl after losing against the Rams. Rams is 15, and Joe is Gematria 15. So that's what kind of stands out with their 15th loss. And of course, he lost his Super Bowl at Atlanta. We're speaking about Jared Goff. So they'd have played a total of 25 games before the Super Bowl if they are the number one seed. Of course, Ravens is 25. So this is what we have to be aware about. You got to think about GOAT King LeBron James winning at the Bay Area. So does that mean Bengals wait till next year? But then the angle, of course, with Huey P. Newton, the Black Panther Party, and Kamala being at the Bay Area could signal for the Ravens next year. So it is going to be a pretty juicy script, to say the least. I think I look at Dan Campbell's birthday when in the whole schematic of things. Of course, he didn't coach any of the other teams in the AFC. He only coached Miami. You know, if the Lions get home field of 4-1, going for 5-1 against Cincinnati in the Super Bowl, something of that nature, or into the Super Bowl with a 4-1 record against Baltimore, that's kind of what I make sense of as far as the playoff record goes. If the Lions are not the number one seed, they enter the Super Bowl with a 5-1 record, could go for 6-1 like Gematria of Detroit Lions. So this is what stands out with 61. The Lions' best start since 1962, 8-2. Of course, Joe Burrow, he had 82 touchdowns at the time of his extension, connecting to Joe Montana's 82 being the 82nd pick. I think it's City of New Orleans. That's Gematria of 82. New Orleans, Louisiana, the abbreviation is 82. So again, that's going to heavily connect to the Lions winning the NFC this year. Enter season with 24 wins. Lions and Bengals is 24. Entering with 29 wins. Joe is Gematria 30. But the 34th season of Mike Brown and Burrow's Gematria 34. The LA Rams, Goff's team, is also Gematria 34. But then if it's the 35th season, they lost the Super Bowl to Matt Stafford. If it ends up being year number 35 instead, and Stafford in reverse, the Bengals losing to Stafford is Gematria of Levi Stadium. In the reverse, when we look at the reverse, or it's or I should say, Stafford is 127 and 26. What was I thinking about? Was it Santa Clara? Or something else. What equaled under 27, 46? 08. Superdome is Gematria under 27 and 46. So this remains a very interesting thing to look out for. But then, of course, when we look at Super Bowl, Superdome and Jackson in the reverse. Lamar Jackson at the Superdome, or are we looking at first win Super Bowl for the Bengals since losing to Matt Stafford at the Superdome? Interesting connection that we have there. But then Burrow threw 60 touchdowns as a college football in this record-breaking season. 60 touchdowns. On the 27th week after the extension. Of course it's gonna be double code, but the double code is gonna show what the two teams that are gonna be part of the narrative for the next Super Bowl, what that is about. Hey, if the Warriors scored 89 points, 93 to 89, Isn't Santa Clara 89? Or no, it's 79. Okay. And again, and I do like my 1 year, 5 months connection. We gotta be aware of psyops. Remember last year when I told you the 49ers and the Ravens was never gonna happen? This is why you have to be aware of psychological operations. Psychological operations, psychological to the core. Interesting that the Lions got their first win over Minnesota. They won 29-27. That was week 13, so they could lose to the Bengals. Bengals could be 1-3 in the Super Bowl. Well, when was that game? Was that December the 7th? Well, Joe Burrow's under 27, if I'm not mistaken. Let's type in the score 29-27. Or Lions Vikings. The first win. As time expired for the Detroit Lions. 41st passing attempt. Now that was his 25th completion of the game. 25 is Gematria Ravens. In the Super Bowl in 2025, of course. Of course, 5 and 7 is the championship number. And that was December the 5th. So this wasn't December 7th. December 5th. His first win in 2021 to the Super Bowl in 2025. The Lions, they scored 29 points. 2-9 is the day of the Super Bowl. 38 months after beating Minnesota for Dan Campbell's first win as coach is when they will play in the Super Bowl. Not sure what 166 weeks is about. 3 years and 2 months. Tigers 32. If you see a black quarterback in the Super Bowl, yada yada. In Super Bowl 59, this is why I've liked Lamar Jackson. Minnesota Vikings in reverse is Cincinnati is Gematria Cincinnati Bengals. How much amount of time from the day that Dan Campbell became the coach to the day of the win occurred around his first win as the coach against Minnesota. Just over 45 weeks. The Super Bowl is at New Orleans. New Orleans is 45. May the 16th, Jared Goff signs an extension. What's the amount of time from the extension to the day of the Super Bowl? Let's find out. I want to go to Jared Goff's playoff record too. There are many lenses to look at this to narrow down. Jared Goff, Bay Area kid, playing the Super Bowl the next season before a Super Bowl at the Bay Area. So that's a thing that makes sense as well. 6-4, 7-4, 7-5, losing the Cincinnati Bengals is Gematria 74. 11 games, 7 wins, 12 games to stay at 7 wins. Joseph Burrow. He does have a playoff total of 8 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. Remember that Joe Montana's the 82nd pick, and Joe Burrow had 82 touchdowns at the time of his extension, so that is worth noting. Against the Bengals, he does have 45 completions, like New Orleans is 45. 73 attempts against the Bengals. Jackson's Gematria of 73. But by conclusion, 2-9, February the 9th, Minnesota is Gematria of 110, the 1 win and the 10 losses. But an interesting thing to think about as far as GOAT King LeBron James in the Cleveland Cavaliers 3-1 comeback for their next title for the state of Ohio. Nine or 10 years. Joe Burrow is number 9. That could represent the 9 years later for the state of Ohio to win the Game 7. So these are the things to think about again.